He cheated on me with my best friend and I thought that was the worst betrayal of my life, but I was completely wrong because one mysterious message uncovered a secret so dangerous that it changed everything I believed about my marriage, and by the time I learned the truth someone was already trying to silence me forever. He cheated. I still remember that evening because it started like every other ordinary day. I left work early hoping to surprise my husband Daniel with his favorite dinner and a bottle of wine because our 7th wedding anniversary was only a few days away, and I wanted us to spend more time together. I smiled the whole drive home thinking about our future and the family we planned to build, but the moment I opened the front door something felt different. The house was too quiet, yet I could hear faint voices coming from upstairs. My heart started beating faster because Daniel was supposed to be working late, and no one else should have been inside our home. I slowly walked toward the staircase calling his name, but there was no answer, only whispers that stopped the second my footsteps reached the hallway. Every step felt heavier than the last until I reached our bedroom door. It was slightly open and I pushed it with shaking hands. What I saw in that room shattered every dream I had ever built. Daniel and my best friend Olivia were together, and the look on their faces told me everything before either of them could say a single word. The shopping bag slipped from my hand and hit the floor. The sound finally made them turn toward me. Daniel jumped back trying to explain while Olivia covered her face with tears, but I could not hear anything because my world had gone completely silent. The two people I trusted more than anyone had destroyed my life in a single moment. Without saying a word, I turned around and walked out of the room. Daniel followed me, begging me to listen, claiming it was a mistake, that it only happened once, but every excuse sounded emptier than the last. Olivia kept crying and repeating that she never wanted to hurt me, yet she had been sitting at my dinner table laughing with me only 2 nights before, pretending to be my sister. I grabbed my car keys and drove away with tears blurring my vision until I reached the lake where Daniel had proposed to me years earlier. I sat there for hours wondering how long they had been lying to me and whether every memory I loved had been nothing more than a carefully planned lie. Then my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number, and the words on the screen made my blood run cold because it said, "This is only the beginning and you still do not know the truth." My hands started shaking as I read the message again because the words felt too personal to be a random prank. I looked around the empty parking lot near the lake wondering if someone was watching me. The number had no name, and when I tried to call it, the phone was switched off. I wanted to ignore it, but something deep inside me whispered that whoever sent it knew far more than I did. A few minutes later, Daniel called again and again, but I rejected every call. Then Olivia sent a long message begging for forgiveness, saying she had made the biggest mistake of her life, but I could not bring myself to read the rest because every word reminded me of the betrayal I had just witnessed. I drove to my older sister Sarah's apartment hoping she would help me understand everything. The moment she opened the door, she knew something was terribly wrong because my face was pale and my eyes were filled with tears. I told her everything from the strange silence in the house to opening the bedroom door and finding Daniel with Olivia. Sarah hugged me tightly, but instead of looking surprised, she looked frightened, almost guilty. Before I could ask why, she quietly admitted that she had seen Daniel and Olivia together weeks ago at a restaurant across town. She said she wanted to tell me, but Daniel convinced her that he was planning to confess everything himself. Those words hurt even more because it meant everyone around me had been protecting the people who destroyed my marriage while I was the only one living in a beautiful lie. That night I could not sleep, so I opened our shared bank account on my phone, and what I discovered made my heart stop. Thousands of dollars had disappeared over the last 6 months, transferred into an account I had never seen before. Daniel had always managed our finances and I trusted him without question, but now every payment looked like another hidden secret. As I searched through more records, I found receipts for expensive hotels, jewelry, and weekend trips that I had never been part of. Every date matched a time when Daniel claimed he was working late or traveling for business. My entire marriage suddenly felt like a carefully written story built on lies. Just as I was about to close the banking app, another notification appeared. A transfer had been made only minutes earlier, and attached to it was a name I had never heard before. Then my phone rang from the same unknown number, and when I answered, a calm voice whispered, "If you want the whole truth, meet me tomorrow at noon and come alone." The next morning I barely slept, but I knew I had to find out who was calling me and why they seemed to know every secret Daniel had hidden from me. I drove to the small coffee shop mentioned in the message, my heart pounding with every step. I expected to see a stranger, but instead an older woman stood up. The moment she saw me, her eyes filled with sadness as if she had been carrying a painful secret for years. She introduced herself as Grace, and before I could ask a single question, she placed a thick envelope on the table and quietly said, "I am sorry you had to learn the truth this way." I opened the envelope with trembling hands, and inside were dozens of photographs, copies of bank statements, and handwritten notes. Every picture showed Daniel with the same woman over many months, but the woman was not Olivia. It was someone I had never seen before. Grace explained that the woman in the photos was her daughter Emily and Daniel had promised to marry her after telling her that he was already divorced. Emily believed every word, until she discovered he was still living with his wife. Grace said her daughter was heartbroken and wanted to expose Daniel, but before she could confront him, she suddenly disappeared without telling anyone where she had gone. I felt the room spinning because this was no longer about one affair, it was a life built on endless lies. I looked through the papers again, and found the same unknown account where our money had been transferred. Every payment matched the dates in the photographs. Daniel had been spending our savings while pretending we were struggling to pay our bills. As I prepared to leave, Grace stopped me and handed me a small silver key. She said Emily mailed it to her only a week before disappearing, with a short note saying, "If anything happens to me, give this key to Daniel's wife because she deserves the truth more than anyone." I stared at the key, wondering what it could possibly open. Then I unfolded the note hidden beneath it, and my breath caught in my chest because one sentence was written in large letters: "Do not trust Olivia. She is not the biggest liar in this story." Before I could ask Grace another question, her phone rang. She answered for only a few seconds, then her face turned completely white. She looked at me with fear and whispered, "Someone knows we met today and they are coming for us right now." Grace grabbed my hand and we rushed out of the coffee shop without looking back. My heart was beating so hard that I could barely breathe. A black SUV slowly turned into the parking lot and stopped near the entrance. Two men stepped out and started looking around as if they were searching for someone. Grace whispered that we had no time to waste and pulled me toward her old car. The moment we drove away, the SUV followed us through every street, making it impossible to believe it was just a coincidence. After several tense minutes, Grace turned onto a narrow country road and finally lost them. She parked beside an abandoned storage building and took a deep breath before unlocking a small metal door with the silver key Emily had left behind. Inside the dusty room was a single locker hidden behind old boxes. Grace opened it and handed me a sealed envelope with my name written across the front in Daniel's handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a flash drive, another stack of documents, and a handwritten letter. The first sentence made my entire body freeze. "If you are reading this, then everything has already fallen apart, and someone is trying to hide the truth." I plugged the flash drive into my laptop, and dozens of videos appeared, each one secretly recorded by Daniel over the past year. The first video showed Daniel arguing with a man I had never seen before, demanding more money and refusing to continue until he was paid. The second video revealed Olivia crying while saying she wanted to leave because everything had gone too far. Then the final recording changed everything. Daniel looked directly into the camera and admitted that someone had been blackmailing him for months, threatening to destroy everyone he loved unless he followed their orders. I could not believe what I was hearing because the man I hated only hours earlier suddenly looked terrified instead of evil. Before the video ended, Daniel spoke one final sentence: "If anything happens to me, do not trust the person you think is innocent because they planned this from the very beginning." At that exact moment, footsteps echoed outside the storage room. Someone slowly tried the door handle, then a familiar voice called my name. It was Sarah, my own sister. But before I could answer, Grace looked into my eyes and whispered, "If you open that door, you may never leave this place alive because the person behind everything has finally found us." Lock